My name is Emma Hayes. I am 34 years old. When I look back at the day I met David, it feels like watching a movie about someone else's life, someone young and foolish who believed fairy tales could come true. We met at a rooftop bar in downtown Seattle during a mutual friend's birthday party, and the connection between us was electric, undeniable, the kind that makes your skin tingle and your heart race. David was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. Tall, confident, with a smile that could disarm anyone. When he looked at me that night, really looked at me, I felt like I was the only person who existed in the entire city. From the start, he made me feel like I was enough. He worked as a corporate attorney at one of those glass tower firms where everyone wore expensive suits and carried leather briefcases. I was a graphic designer at a small creative agency, making decent money but nothing compared to his world. Still, he never made me feel small. When he proposed after 18 months of dating on a beach in Maui with the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I thought I had won life's lottery. Our wedding was everything I had dreamed of. We exchanged vows in a historic mansion outside the city, surrounded by 200 guests, white roses, and string lights that made everything look magical. I remember walking down that aisle in my ivory gown, my father's arm steady beside me, while David stood at the altar looking at me like I was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered. Friends applauded. My mother sobbed into her handkerchief, and I told myself this was the beginning of my forever. Those first months of marriage felt like floating on air. We moved into a gorgeous condo in Capitol Hill, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Every room felt full of possibility, of lazy Sunday mornings, wine-filled evenings, and someday soon, the sound of children's laughter echoing through the halls. David treated me like I was precious. On weekends, we'd hike through the Cascades, stopping at hidden waterfalls where he'd pull me close and kiss me until I was breathless. On rainy evenings, we'd curl up on the couch, his arms wrapped around me, talking about the life we'd build together. "I can't wait to be a dad, Emma," he'd whisper against my hair. "And you're going to be the kind of mom kids write about in school essays." Those words made my heart soar, because motherhood was something I'd wanted for as long as I could remember. I imagined it all so clearly, rocking babies to sleep, finger painting at the kitchen table, teaching tiny humans to tie their shoes. Sometimes at work, I'd catch myself sketching little onesies and nursery layouts in the margins of my design mock-ups. It felt like destiny was finally pulling me exactly where I was meant to be. David's parents welcomed me with open arms at first. His mother, Catherine, a polished woman who always smelled like expensive perfume, would invite me to charity luncheons and squeeze my hand while saying how delighted she was to finally have a daughter. His father was quieter, more reserved, but pleasant enough. It felt like I wasn't just gaining a husband. I was inheriting an entire legacy. I remember one specific night, maybe 4 months after the wedding. We were lying in bed, the city lights casting soft shadows across the ceiling. David reached over, traced his finger along my jawline, and said, "This is it, Emma. You, me, and soon, little versions of us running around making chaos." I laughed, tangled my fingers with his, but inside I was already picturing a little boy with David's dark hair or a little girl with my freckles. It all felt so inevitable, so close, like happiness had finally chosen me as its home. Looking back now, I realize how dangerously naive I was to believe that love and commitment could guarantee anything. But in that season, wrapped in his arms and surrounded by dreams, I truly believed nothing could tear us apart. At night, when sleep wouldn't come, I'd whisper prayers into the darkness, thanking God for David, asking for blessings over our future children, pleading for his love to stay as strong as it felt in those moments. And when his hand would find mine under the covers, I'd close my eyes and smile, convinced those prayers were already being answered. If someone had told me then that this man, the one who made me feel invincible, would one day look at me with disgust and throw me out like garbage, I would have called them a liar. In that moment, cocooned in the warmth of new beginnings, I believed I was untouchable. I believed I had everything. But beginnings, no matter how beautiful, never show you the cliff waiting just ahead. The questions started innocently enough, gentle at first, then sharper, like paper cuts that wouldn't stop stinging. Any news to share? Catherine would ask during our monthly dinners at their estate, her eyes flickering to my stomach with pointed curiosity. David would laugh it off, squeeze my knee under the table, tell his mother we were enjoying being newlyweds. I tried to ignore the knot forming in my chest. Couples didn't always conceive immediately. I knew that. I marked my calendar religiously, downloaded fertility apps, bought ovulation kits from the pharmacy with my head down, embarrassed even though the cashier didn't care. Each month when my period arrived, I'd lock myself in the bathroom and stare at the negative test, feeling something inside me crack just a little more. But I hid it. I smiled at work, posted cheerful photos on Instagram, told myself it was just stress, just timing, just my body needing to adjust. Months slipped by, and the glow of our marriage began to dim like a candle burning low. David was patient at first, brushing off his mother's increasingly pointed comments, holding me when I cried after another negative test. But I could see the change in his eyes, the way his smile didn't quite reach them anymore, the way his gaze would linger on families with strollers in the park, a kind of longing mixed with something darker, resentment maybe. I tried to keep up the facade. To my colleagues, I was still Emma with the perfect marriage, the beautiful condo, the charming husband. But behind closed doors, I was someone else entirely. Someone who held her breath every month. Someone who stayed up until 3 a.m., scrolling through fertility forums, reading success stories from women who tried for years, desperately searching for hope. Someone who pressed her face into the pillow to muffle her sobs so David wouldn't wake up and see how broken I felt. After 8 months, I suggested we see a specialist. David agreed, though I could tell it wounded his pride. Sitting in Dr. Rachel Morrison's sterile office, I felt exposed, vulnerable, like every failure was being catalogued and examined under fluorescent lights. Blood draws, ultrasounds, invasive questions about my cycle that made my cheeks burn. I endured it all, desperate for answers, desperate for someone to tell me what was wrong so I could fix it. The results came back unremarkable. Everything looked normal. No issues detected. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt mocked by the emptiness of it all. If nothing was wrong, then why wasn't I pregnant? Dr. Morrison suggested lifestyle changes, stress reduction, acupuncture. She said these things like they were simple switches I could flip. But when you want something this badly, every day feels like a countdown. Every month, another failure carved into your heart. David's patience eroded like sand beneath waves. He didn't yell at first, but his silence screamed. He'd come home later and later, sometimes missing dinner entirely. The affectionate kisses became perfunctory pecks. Nights we used to spend talking and laughing turned into him scrolling through his phone while I sat across the room, pretending to read. One night, lying in the darkness with his back turned to me, I whispered, "Do you still think we'll have a baby?" The silence stretched so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he sighed, deep and heavy. "I don't know, Emma. I honestly don't know." Those words lodged themselves in my throat like shards of glass. I kept returning to Dr. Morrison. Each appointment, another exercise in humiliation. Each time, the same answer. Nothing wrong. Sometimes I wondered if maybe it was David, but suggesting that felt like betrayal, like I'd be shifting blame when I was the one who felt defective. So I kept quiet, swallowing my suspicions, carrying the full weight of the problem alone. My body became enemy territory. Every twinge, every symptom, I analyzed obsessively. A day late and I'd spiral into hope, only to crash when the test showed 1 line instead of 2. I started hiding the pregnancy tests so David wouldn't see how often I was checking, wouldn't see my desperation. He stopped asking, and I stopped telling. The worst part was the isolation. I couldn't bring myself to tell Maya, my best friend since college, how bad things had gotten. She was juggling 2 kids under 5, posting adorable photos of soccer games and birthday parties. Each photo felt like a knife twisting in my chest, a mixture of jealousy and shame I couldn't shake. I'd like her posts, leave cheerful comments, while inside I felt like I was disintegrating. By the end of that first year, the silence in our condo became suffocating. It wasn't the comfortable silence of 2 people who didn't need words, but the kind that presses down on your chest until you can't breathe. I knew David was pulling away. I could feel it in the way he flinched when I reached for his hand, in the way he stayed late at the office, even on weekends, in the way he talked about the future without including me in it, and though I tried to stay hopeful, lighting candles in churches I hadn't attended since childhood, whispering prayers to a God I wasn't sure was listening, clinging to every story of women who conceived after years of trying, deep down I was terrified. Terrified that I was already losing him, terrified that my body had betrayed not just me, but my entire marriage. Terrified that love, no matter how strong it once was, couldn't survive the weight of this emptiness. Terrified that I was becoming the villain in a story I never asked to be part of. It wasn't long before the whispers from David's family turned into outright accusations. Sunday dinners at the estate became my personal hell. I could feel their eyes on me, dissecting me, judging me like I was a product that had failed quality control. Catherine's warmth evaporated, replaced by icy politeness and barbed questions. "So, Emma, any updates?" "David's not getting any younger. His career is thriving. He deserves a legacy." I'd force a smile, murmur something about patience, while inside each word felt like a stone being dropped into my stomach. David stopped defending me. In the beginning, he'd redirect the conversation, give me reassuring glances, remind everyone that these things took time. Now he just sat there, stone-faced, letting their comments hang in the air like accusations he silently agreed with. The gossip spread beyond family dinners. Our neighbors noticed that after nearly 2 years of marriage, our place remained suspiciously quiet. No baby gear cluttering the hallway. No nursery being prepared. Maya mentioned once, carefully, that women from our college group were whispering, "That's the Hayes girl, married to the lawyer. Can't seem to have kids." I pretended not to care, laughed it off. But at night, I'd lie awake replaying those words, wondering if everyone saw me as fundamentally broken. The cruelest moments came at the grocery store, at coffee shops, anywhere I existed in public. I remember standing in line at a bookstore when 2 women behind me spoke just loud enough for me to hear. "Such a waste," one said. "Beautiful home, successful husband, but what good is she if she can't give him children?" My hands shook so badly, I dropped my wallet, coins scattering across the floor while they watched me scramble to collect them. David changed in ways that gutted me. He became cold, distant, like I was a roommate he tolerated rather than a wife he loved. Sometimes he'd come home from work and walk straight past me without a word, disappearing into his office until late at night. Our dinners, once full of conversation and laughter, became silent endurance tests where his only words were criticisms. "This pasta is overcooked." Or, "Did you forget to pick up my dry cleaning again?" One evening, after a particularly brutal dinner at his parents' house where Catherine made a toast to David's future children, as though I wasn't even sitting there, I confronted him in the car. "David, why don't you say something when they humiliate me like that?" He didn't even glance at me, just stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "Because maybe they're not wrong, Emma. Maybe we're both wasting time." I felt my entire chest collapse. "Wasting time? I'm your wife, David, not a broken appliance you can just replace." His eyes, when they finally met mine, were empty, cold. "A marriage without children isn't a real marriage, Emma. You know that. My parents know that. Everyone knows that. I cried silently the entire drive home, while he turned up the radio and drummed his fingers on the steering wheel like nothing had happened. That night I slept in the guest room for the first time, curled into a ball, wondering how love could turn into something so cruel. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of shame. Catherine stopped inviting me to her charity events altogether. At family gatherings, they'd toast to David's success, his future, as though I was already gone. Once, his father actually pulled him aside, right in front of me, and said loud enough for me to hear, "Son, you're young, brilliant, you've got everything ahead of you. Don't let this situation hold you back from the life you deserve." I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. Maya tried to help, bringing me coffee and sitting with me while I cried, reminding me that marriages were built on more than biology. But her words felt empty when I'd return home to a husband who could barely stand to look at me. Each day, the pressure mounted. Each failed month wasn't just my private grief anymore. It was ammunition for his family's judgment, proof of my inadequacy, fuel for David's growing contempt. It wasn't just that my body felt broken, my entire soul felt barren. The love that once bloomed between us had withered into something unrecognizable, brittle and dead. And no matter how much I watered it with tears and prayers and desperate apologies, nothing grew. The cruelest irony was that I still loved him, even as he turned away, even as his family sharpened their words against me. I clung to the memory of who we used to be. I believed if I could just hold on, just endure a little longer, maybe things would turn around. Maybe a miracle was still possible. But miracles don't arrive just because you beg for them. And love, no matter how fierce, can't survive in a house where every silence feels like condemnation, where every glance carries the weight of disappointment, where the word barren echoes in every room. When the pressure became unbearable, I threw myself into finding solutions with the desperation of a drowning woman reaching for anything that might float. If there was even a whisper of hope, I chased it, no matter how far-fetched or expensive. Dr. Morrison kept reassuring me that nothing was medically wrong, that I just needed patience and reduced stress. But patience felt like a cruel joke when every month ended with my heart breaking all over again. I dove deeper into the medical route. More blood work, invasive procedures, hormone injections that left bruises on my stomach. I tracked everything obsessively. My basal body temperature, ovulation windows, cervical mucus, things I never imagined I'd have to monitor so closely. My bathroom counter became a shrine to fertility. Test strips, supplements, vitamins lined up like soldiers ready for battle. David barely tolerated it anymore. "Emma, you're spiraling," he'd snap, tossing his keys onto the counter without looking at me. "Maybe if you stopped obsessing, it would just happen naturally." Naturally. As if I hadn't tried that. As if my body wasn't betraying me every single month. When modern medicine gave me nothing but empty reassurances, I turned to faith with a fervor I didn't know I possessed. I started attending church again, sitting in the back pew during Wednesday evening services, whispering desperate prayers while tears streamed down my face. I fasted, gave up coffee and wine and anything that might somehow be blocking my blessings. Maya joined me once, holding my hands in her living room, praying with such conviction that I almost believed it would work. "God hasn't forgotten you, Emma," she whispered, her own eyes wet with tears. "He's just waiting for the right time." But each negative test felt like proof that maybe God had forgotten me, or worse, that he'd decided I didn't deserve this. Then came the alternative remedies. The phase I'm least proud of but most desperate about. Catherine, of all people, suggested it during one of our increasingly tense dinners. She slid a small paper bag across the table toward me, her expression tight. "My friend swears by this herbal blend. Maybe it will help with whatever your issue is." The way she said "your issue" made my stomach turn, but I took the bag anyway. That night, I boiled those bitter, foul-smelling herbs on the stove, gagging them down, while David wrinkled his nose from the living room. I visited acupuncturists who stuck needles in my ankles and wrists, promising to unblock my chi. I saw a naturopath who put me on a restrictive diet, no gluten, no dairy, no joy. I spent money we couldn't afford on supplements with names I couldn't pronounce, hiding the credit card statements because I knew David would call it foolish. Still, nothing changed. The desperation consumed me entirely. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror one night, my hands pressed against my flat stomach, tears streaming down my face. "Why won't you work?" I whispered to my reflection. "What's wrong with you?" The woman staring back looked hollow, broken, someone I didn't recognize anymore, someone whose entire identity had become wrapped up in this one failing. David's patience evaporated completely during this time. He started staying out later and later, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. When I'd ask where he'd been, he'd brush me off with vague excuses about client dinners or networking events. The distance between us became a canyon I couldn't cross, no matter how hard I tried. His words grew sharper, too. Once, when I showed him yet another fertility supplement I'd ordered online, he exploded. "You're embarrassing yourself. Emma, do you really think drinking some magic tea is going to fix you? Fix me." As though I was broken beyond repair. The package slipped from my hands and I sank onto the bathroom floor, sobbing until my ribs ached. He didn't come to check on me. By then, even Maya struggled to console me. She'd invite me over, let her kids climb into my lap, try to remind me there was more to life than motherhood. But it hurt too much. Watching her son show me his drawings, hearing her daughter's bright laughter, it was like pressing my face against the window of a world I could never enter. And yet, I couldn't give up. Some stubborn, foolish part of me still believed that if I just tried one more thing, found one more doctor, said one more prayer, everything would change. So I kept going. Specialists, healers, support groups filled with women whose stories mirrored mine. Late-night internet spirals that left me more confused than before. But the harder I tried, the more my dignity crumbled. My marriage was unraveling thread by thread, and I could feel it slipping through my fingers. What I didn't know then was that my desperation wasn't saving anything. It was only delaying the devastating blow that would soon knock me to my knees and change everything forever. The day my world shattered is burned into my memory with a clarity that still takes my breath away. It was a Thursday afternoon, unseasonably warm for Seattle in March. I'd come home early from work, excited because I'd landed a major client and wanted to surprise David with his favorite takeout. But when I walked through the door, I found him standing in the living room with 2 large suitcases beside him. My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't meet my eyes, just kept adjusting the handle on one of the bags, his jaw set in that way that meant his mind was made up about something. When he finally spoke, his words were calm, measured, deadly. "Emma, this isn't working. I can't do this anymore." I felt the room tilt. "Can't do what?" "This. Us. This empty marriage." He gestured around the condo, at the life we'd built together. "I'm tired of waiting for something that's never going to happen. Tired of making excuses to my family, to my colleagues, to everyone who asks why we don't have kids yet. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" Humiliating. For him. The word echoed in my head like a slap. "David, please." I dropped my bag, took a step toward him. "Dr. Morrison said it just takes time. We can keep trying. We can." He cut me off with a bitter laugh. "Time, Emma? It's been almost 3 years. I can't waste the rest of my life waiting for your body to do what it's supposed to do. I want children. I deserve children. And if you can't give them to me, then there's no point in staying married." The room spun. I gripped the back of the couch to steady myself. You're leaving me? Just like that? I've already filed, he said, his voice flat. My lawyer will be in touch. I need you to pack your things and be out by the weekend. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. David, I love you, I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. We can figure this out. Please don't throw away everything we built, please. But when his eyes finally met mine, they were cold, empty, like he was looking at a stranger. Love isn't enough, Emma. A marriage needs a purpose. Children are that purpose. And since you clearly can't provide that, there's nothing left to salvage. Those words destroyed me more completely than anything I'd ever experienced. I wanted to scream, to beg, to fight, but my voice died in my throat. Instead, I stood there, frozen, while he walked past me toward the door. I'll be staying at my parents' place, he said without turning around. Make sure you're gone by Saturday. And then he left. Just like that. 3 years of marriage, gone in the time it took him to walk out the door. I collapsed onto the couch, shaking so hard I thought I might break apart. Maya came over hours later when I finally managed to text her. She found me still sitting in the dark, my phone clutched in my hand, mascara streaked down my face. That bastard, she whispered, pulling me into her arms. You don't deserve this. You don't. But in that moment, I wasn't sure what I deserved anymore. All I could hear was David's voice, cold and final. If you can't give me children, there's no point. That weekend, I packed everything that was mine into boxes while the condo echoed with emptiness. Every item I touched felt like a memory being erased. The coffee maker we'd picked out together. The throw pillows I'd chosen because they matched the curtains. The framed photo from our honeymoon that I turned face down because I couldn't bear to look at his smile. I stayed at Maya's for 2 weeks, sleeping on her couch, crying so hard some nights that she'd come sit with me at 3 a.m., just holding my hand while I shattered into pieces. The humiliation was suffocating. Everyone knew. David didn't hide it. He told his family, his colleagues, our mutual friends. The story spread like wildfire. He left her because she couldn't have kids. Poor David. Wasted years on her. She was defective. I stopped going out, stopped answering calls. I felt like every person who looked at me knew my deepest failure, my most private shame. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have possibly known as I lay broken in that guest room, was that my body had already defied every expectation, that the very thing David claimed I could never give him was already growing inside me. 3 tiny lives, waiting, hidden, about to change everything. And that's where we'll pause for today, my friends. But trust me, this story is far from over. What happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. So make sure you stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because when Emma returns, everything David thought he knew is about to come crashing down.